I would like you to carry away with you as a permanent memory the realization of the meaning and the importance of the consciousness of the individual. Now, I know that in your reading and in your studying, you are learning or have learned all about God. But this will only tend to separate you from your good unless you can understand that all that you are learning about God is the truth about your consciousness. For God constitutes your consciousness. This belief in God, or this faith in God, is all very well in its place, and it may eventually lead someone somewhere, but it isn't a good thing at this stage of your unfoldment. Unless, when you think of God, you can also realize oneness or at one-ment, you will have this God off here. Now, while God is a word in your mind, there is no use of praying, because you will get no answer, because you can't get an answer from a word in your mind, a word which represents a concept. And even if you turn the word God into mind or life or love, it still will not be yourself that you're thinking of. It will still be something up in your mind about which you're entertaining a concept. And if we were to all write a paper on what is divine love, or what is divine mind, or what is God, you would find that we would have just this many different concepts of God, mind, life, love, and that would mean that we did not know God at all. Now, as you begin to realize God as your being, as that which constitutes your being, as the essence, the law, the life, the substance, the activity of your being, you are bound to have duality. That is, you are bound to have God and you, instead of having God manifested as you. Now, the difference between failure and success lies just in those two words, and or as. If there is a you conceiving God, thinking of God, hoping for God, searching for God, there is duality and failure. And the moment there is the realization, I am that I am. I am that I am. Not I will be, I'd long to be, I hope to be, I would like to be worthy of. Not that at all. I am that I am. I am that. I am He. Then you have brought God incarnate as individual being. God the Father manifested as God the Son, but still just one. God the Father is God the Son. God the Father is manifest as God the Son. And until you can see that, until you can see that I, God, am expressing myself as I, Joel, and therefore all that I, God, have is thine, I, Joel, because we are not two, we are one, you will be missing the mark of your demonstration. Only this oneness, or realization of oneness, oneness is the fact, whether or not you know it, but only this realization of oneness can stop you from wanting something or someone external to yourself. And as long as there is want or desire, there is a sense of separation. That is why in the Infinite Way Wisdoms you have that statement that puzzles so many students, that desire is sin. Why? If I desire integrity, isn't it acknowledging that I haven't it? If I desire companionship, isn't it an acknowledgement that I haven't it? And so it is that even if I desire God, it's an acknowledgement that I haven't it, and all of this is sin, because I and the Father are one, and all that the Father hath is mine. And as I abide in that Word, and as I let that Word abide in me, I have no desires. I only am living in this moment, conscious of the fact that whatever I need an hour from now will appear. Whatever I need tomorrow will appear. Whatever I need next year will appear. Why? Because I now embody it. I have meat that the world knows not of. And all I have to do is be patient and live in this very moment and feel assured that all that the Father hath is embodied in me, and it is unfolding every moment in accord with my need. So that if my need this moment is dollars, then be assured of this, those dollars appear at the moment that they're needed, and most often before that. If my need is transportation, be assured that at the right moment it is waiting for me. If the need is anything at all, it becomes apparent, not because I desire it, not because I want it, not because I need it, but because I possess it. And it is very much like those who have these large freezers and have a stock of food in it for a whole month. They don't put it on the table all in one meal. Knowing that it's in the freezer, they're content to bring out only that which is necessary at each meal. And they don't have to go and look in the freezer to be sure there's enough for tomorrow, because they know there's enough for all this month. But in this, our spiritual life, once I know that I and the Father are one and not two, and once I know that God is closer to me than breathing and nearer than hands and feet, once I know that God is infinite intelligence and therefore must know my needs, once I know that God is divine love, and it is His good pleasure to give me the kingdom, it is as if I had an eternal freezer and an infinite one. And so I need not be concerned for anything more than I need at this particular hour, because whatever it is that is needed in the next hour will unfold from within that infinite storehouse, which is the I that I am. And within this I that I am, I have meat that the world knows not of. I have the power of resurrection. so that even if there are some lost years of the locust, this power of resurrection will restore those years. It makes no difference how late in life it is. Life is eternal. And life is no older than the life we're living at this moment. We are just as young this moment as a child of 3. Because this is the only moment in which we can live. And in this moment in which we are living and being, what more can we have and what more can they have? You may say they have a longer future to look forward to. Well, now you just look around at some of the gravestones and you'll find they don't, a lot of them. They aren't any more sure of tomorrow at 3 years of age than we are at 30. Well, I mean approximately. You mean I'm taking advantage of Fred Jackson? Well, I am 30, I know of that. But if it's any more, I don't feel it. And the reason is that I can go back in my own thought and remember that at 30 or 35 or 40, I was no more sure of tomorrow. I think I was less sure of tomorrow than I am now. Because in the human scale, who knows what tomorrow has? And at least today I do know what tomorrow has. I cannot be separated from the life of God. I cannot be separated from the love of God. I cannot be separated from the consciousness of God. And so the only thing I don't know about tomorrow is in which room I'll be living, or which state, or which country. But I've lived in so many in my lifetime that it doesn't make any difference. I've lived a lot of places and a lot of lifetimes. And you'll come to know eventually that the only one that counts is this minute. It is in this minute that I am alive, fully alive. And it is this minute in which I am aware of God. And it is in this minute in which I am aware of an infinite storehouse. And I have witnessed it in every kind of form manifest itself over the years in whatever form was necessary. And so it is that the only age we can ever acknowledge is this minute. And as you know yourself, as you're sitting there and looking out of your own eyes, you know that you have a feeling of agelessness. You don't have a feeling of age. Even if you're ill, it doesn't make you feel old. And I haven't met anyone yet old enough to tell me that they feel old. It isn't possible. You can only feel your life as of this moment. And as of this moment, it's life. And it's life eternal, and life immortal, and life abundant. But the Master gives us a statement that, it rocks me to the heel. I am come that you might have life, and that you might have it more abundantly. And this I is the I that I am. This I in the midst of me is here for the specific purpose of living my life and living it abundantly. And as long as I can realize that God is that I that is within me, or that this I that is within me is the very Christ of God, the very offspring, the very heir, one with God, then I can live this minute abundantly. And who can live any other minute abundantly but this minute? There isn't any other minute. That you can't live yesterday abundantly. You can't live tomorrow abundantly. Only in this very moment of grace can we live abundantly, and only by virtue of the I that I am. And what I am I? I am that I am. And that I within me is the Son of God, heir of God, joint heir, so much so that I can say, thou seest me, thou seest the Father that sent me, for I and the Father is one. And even then I can acknowledge the Father within me is greater than I. Why? Because there are two aspects of the I the Father and I the Son. And I the Father is that invisible area of me which has manifested itself as I, Joel. And I, Joel, then have all that that invisible I has, because I'm heir to that and to all of it. And that I has been planted in the midst of me that I may have life and that I may have it more abundantly. But you see what happens the minute you think of the word God or divine mind or divine love. You're putting them off somewhere, separate and apart from your own being. Whereas when you think of God, if you will realize that God and I are one, and all that the Father hath is mine, and God has manifested his life as my life, God has manifested himself as the I of my being, and planted in the midst of it my infinity, my abundance, my allness, my immortality, my eternality, my infinity. And by reason of the grace of God, this is true about everyone on the face of the globe. Now, having done that, in order to make this demonstrable in my experience, I must go the second step. Since this is true of me, it is true of all men. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither white nor black. There is neither Oriental nor Occidental. For we are one in our spiritual identity. Call no man on earth your father. For there is one Father, he in heaven, and that makes all of us brothers, sisters, members of one family, of one household. Now, this is indeed the truth, whether the men and women of the world know it or not. But the Master says, ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. And now watch how it operates. The very moment that I sit up here on this platform without any sense of self-righteousness or being holier than thou or better than thou or more valuable to God than thou, the very moment I can look up here and realize there is but one Father and we be brethren, and there are no barriers in that, we are one, then I look upon you with no judgment, no criticism, no condemnation, and even if I were to be aware of sin, it would have to be with forgiveness. Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Neither do I condemn thee. And what would happen to you? You would feel that. If you are a student of the Infinite Way for any length of time, you already know why. But if you are new, I will tell you why. The very moment an individual sets himself up as better or holier or more righteous or more moral or more honest than you you feel something and a barrier goes up within you of defense. It's a defense mechanism that goes up in you, protecting yourself from whoever it is that is sitting here in judgment on you. Or, the same way, if a person confronts you or is about you in any way, any walk of life, and has designs on you, on your money, or in any way looks to you for something that is certainly not their right or due, that sets up a barrier, a mental wall in you, and you start automatically to protect yourself. Well, I suppose the best illustration of that I can give you is that a person who has been trained to be a buyer of any kind, let them just smell a salesman coming along and that wall of defense goes up, you see? And the first thing they say is, no, I don't need anything. It's automatic, even if they know in the next minute that they're going to say, well, maybe. But their first reaction is, no, I don't need anything. Oh, it happens in every department of buying life. Now, and I don't have to tell you how you feel if you see someone coming towards you who you know is about to make a touch. You begin to formulate excuses before they get there. That is because a mental wall goes up of defense. It is the same thing that happens to animals when a person comes along and they sense cruelty or fear in them. Automatically a wall of defense goes up and they go on the offensive, which is their sense of self-protection. And so it is that the only way that we can love one another is by looking upon each other first of all as equals, and then without a trace of desire in any direction. And then when we can do that, your guard goes down and you are enabled to feel that love that is coming towards you, and you send it back. But not recognizing what it is, you merely have the feeling, oh, here is a nice person, or here is a kind person, and all your meaning is, I can feel that they have no designs on me. Now, so it is when you go out into the business world or professional world. As long as you can go out with clean hands, meaning as long as you can go out without self-interest, without desiring something, wanting something, needing something, begging for something, pleading for something, or demanding something, when you can go out in the full consciousness that I and my Father are one and all the Father hath is mine, then we can meet as friends, and you will find what manner of love there is between us. But just let one trace of self-interest into that, and watch how that bond of spiritual brotherhood is broken. Now, there is no way in which we can refrain from desiring something that the other fellow has, unless we know that we already have all of it. Therefore, there is nothing to desire. Or we could go a step further, as you ultimately will in mystical consciousness and the transcendental consciousness, and you will learn that since this is true of your identity, that you already possess it all, you will get to where you do not expect love or gratitude from anyone. You do not expect appreciation from anyone. You do not expect cooperation from anyone. You are completely satisfied to have all of your needs met from within your own being. In other words, you release everyone in the world from any obligation to you, even the obligation of saying thank you. Why? I can get plenty of thanks from God, get plenty of appreciation and gratitude. It isn't really that at all, but it takes that form in our lives. In other words, now watch this, whatever we do to or for anyone else, be sure we are not doing it for thanks. Be sure we are not doing it for appreciation or for recognition or for reward. Why shouldn't we? Because we're just entering into a merchandise bargain when we do. It's a trade, and a trade isn't really love. It's business. Now let us have it this way. What an individual does should be for the purpose of fulfilling themselves, for the purpose of expressing themselves. And so it would be then that if you were a practitioner, don't think for a minute that you'll ever be a practitioner because you want to do something for this world, because it won't work. You never will be a successful practitioner until you're honest enough to admit that you're not doing it for anyone else. You're doing it to fulfill your own nature, because that is what your nature is at this moment. That's what gift has been given to you. That is what talent has been given to you, and you must spend your talents. You must use your talents, or they will rot away. And therefore, you are not acting as a practitioner for the benefit of your patients or your students or the world, but as a matter of your own self-fulfillment. And it is for this reason, then, that you'll never look to them for thanks, appreciation, reward, or gratitude. You will know that your reward, your gratitude, your pay is in the deed. Now, this sets you very, very free. You may have quite a few patients or students who temporarily have no money, or enough merely for their own needs. And what are you going to do? Take some of that away from them? You who are supposed to have attained a consciousness that I have meat the world knows not of? You are going to deprive someone else of the little they have while they're in a position of not knowing the infinite nature of their being? Heaven forbid. You will have to acknowledge, I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing it for recognition or reward. This is the fulfillment of my own being, and whatever is necessary for my life will unfold from within my own being. And then you will find you'll get lots of love and lots of gratitude and lots of reward and lots of compensation. But it may not always come from the direction in which you are looking or expecting it, because now you won't be expecting it from any direction, and you let it come in accord with God's will. And so then you'll find that if there is someone to provide it for you, it'll be someone who at that moment can afford it without any loss to themselves or any sacrifice to themselves. And so, and it may even be that your supply may not come from them. Now it is the same if you are selling merchandise. To look to this buyer or this customer or that customer is limiting God. Whereas to present your product wherever it is right for it to be presented, with the idea that God governs the transaction, leaves the buyer perfectly free to say no when they mean no. It leaves them free not to be sold when they shouldn't be buying. And it leaves you free to find your way to where you are being sought. It operates all through life in every phase. The very moment you realize I have meat, you are not doing anything for pay or compensation or reward. you are looking only to the source within yourself. Oh, that doesn't mean that you're entirely dumb or stupid. And when you see people violating what should be their sense of gratitude or their sense of recognition, you can't help knowing the harm they're doing themselves. But you'll never fall into the trap of believing they're withholding from you. There's your danger if ever you believe that anyone is withholding from you. Because they're not. Anyone who's withholding is withholding from themselves. That's all. The bread they are casting on the water or not casting on the water is the bread that's coming back to them or not coming back to them. And so it is that you learn to live from this mystical basis of living in this moment in the full and complete realization, I and my Father are one, and I have meat the world knows not of. And so I can perform every task that is given me to do without looking for praise, without looking for thanks, without looking for anything. And then, when these do come, being appreciative of the fact that whoever is the instrument for it isn't wide enough awake to be receptive and responsive to God, but never lose sight of the fact that it's God functioning as their being. In other words, it is really your own self operating as the self of others. Now, there are 2 points there in this remembering of the nature of your consciousness, and that it is your consciousness that is determining what comes back into your experience. And here you've seen that as long as I can sit here without judgment, criticism, condemnation, and as long as I can sit here with forgiveness, as long as I sit here without expecting anything, I can let truth, or whatever it may be, pour through, and you out there feel that, and you also feel a responding sense of love, because nobody is trying to take anything from you, nobody is aiming to get something from you, and you feel that confidence, that assurance, that peace. And so what do I bring to myself thereby? I bring to myself your love, your friendship. All right. As long as I am performing my work without any sense of doing it from the standpoint of duty, or from the standpoint of I owe it to you or you owe it to me, as long as I do it from the sense of I am fulfilling myself without seeking a return, once again love has come into the picture. That spiritual bond that you read in the front page of every Infinite Way book and booklet, that bond of invisible spiritual love that has no material tie and looks to no one for anything. All right. I'll take the next step. As I walk out into the world of strangers, in the hotels, on the streets, as long as I am conscious of the fact that God constitutes their individual being, animal, vegetable, mineral, human, as long as I realize God as the source, the soul, the activity of every individual, I meet with cooperation all along the way. In other words, the oil of gladness, the oil of inspiration, the oil of love is the lubricant. And that love has nothing to do with emotion. It has to do only with recognition of true identity. That is the only way that I can love my neighbor as myself, by knowing that my neighbor is myself, and that myself is my neighbor, for we are one, of one household, one spiritual family. God is your Father and God is mine. And then I bring back to me the reaction of cooperation, helpfulness, whatever may come up in the relationships of life. Now let's take another step. If I have the consciousness, when I say I, remember I'm speaking of you. If I have the consciousness of God in the midst of me as being the only power, and that power flowing out through me, I walk around with no fear of an external condition. I have no fear of germs, I have no fear of accidents, I have no fear of persons, no fear of animals. Why? Because there is no power external to me. All power is given unto me. God has given me dominion by virtue of God's grace flowing through me, and that is the only power unto the storm. The storm has no power. How can it have any power if I embody all power? And I is God. Then there's no power left for a storm. How can a germ have power if I embody, or a destructive power, if I embody all power? How can the stars have power if I am the embodiment of all power? And then, as I walk through life, realizing that the power of God is within me, flowing out to bless all that touch my consciousness, do you not see that what I bring back to me is only the power of God flowing through every creature on earth, whether it's human, animal, vegetable, or mineral, and there are no powers left outside to act upon me, and it is my own consciousness of truth that has brought this about. If I realize that God is the only life, then I necessarily understand that life is eternal. So I do not have to walk around fearing death. Once I've come to the place of not fearing death, that's the last enemy that shall be overcome. There are no others after that, because you see, neither disease nor age can act, except that it has death as its ultimate. So, where there is no longer any fear of death, age and disease stop operating. Because the ultimate of disease and the ultimate of age is death. And so then, what a person is fearing is not the age in which they're living, because they're living beautifully right this minute. They are fearing the future, which means death. A person doesn't fear a disease. They fear the consequences of disease, which ultimately is death. Therefore, when the fear of death has been overcome, through the realization that even death cannot separate me from the love of God, the life of God, the consciousness of God, then neither age nor disease have any ground in which to flourish. None whatsoever. We become barren soil so far as any seed of death or disease is concerned, or age. Do you not see then that it is the activity of your consciousness that is determining the reflex action that is your individual experience? It is the activity of your consciousness that is bringing back to you whatever experiences you are having. Not that you are evil and that you are bringing evil experiences, heaven forbid. But as long as you are ignorant of the truth that would make you free, you're in bondage. It is not truth that will make you free. It is knowing the truth that will make you free. It is not God that will save you from anything. It is realizing God. God is on every battlefield while men are being slaughtered. God is in every hospital where people are dying, or every accident. God is in every fire where people are being burned up. And God doesn't stop it. And God never will, except as God is realized. Many times that question is asked, what about these men, particularly flyers, who get into tough spots and then, through turning to God, find miracles take place and get them out? The answer must be very clear. When there isn't a sign or trace of human aid, they've got to turn to God, and they realize God. If they don't realize God, they're not saved. When they do realize God, and in that desperate situation, it's not difficult to realize God. Let me show you how close God is. Lindbergh, the flyer, tells this story of his flight to Paris, that first flight. And he says that it was impossible for him to stay awake on that entire flight, and that many times he fell asleep, and that when he awakened, he knew that he was far off course, but he didn't know how far, because he didn't always know how long he had slept, or what his speed was, or perhaps what the wind against him was. And he knew that in order to land where he wanted to land, he would have to set himself back on course. Now, when he left New York, his figures showed him a certain place in Europe where he would land, somewhere between 50 and 500 miles. In other words, he might be anywhere from 50 to 500 miles away from that particular spot, but it didn't make any difference because he could quickly travel that distance and get back right on the spot. And here he is falling asleep and going off course and not knowing whether he's to the right or left or up or down. And he says that there was a man in the back of his airplane, and this man told him what adjustments to make in his gadgets up front, whatever they're called, and he did. He followed instructions, and he landed less than 50 miles away. He landed almost on the spot where he was due, and then flew right into Paris. And all because there was a man in the back of the plane, inside, who told him just what adjustments to make, what calculations to make in arithmetic and mathematics. And they were correct. That's how close God is. But there has to be an innate something in us, which men like Lindbergh have, which is a conviction in a transcendental. Do you see? There must be an inner conviction in them that there is something in their life greater than themselves. And I think you can find that in reading the writings of his wife. You'll find what manner of woman she is and what manner of man he must be. And so you will see then that as long as we realize or give acknowledgement to the fact that there is a he within me that's greater than he that is in the world, a he that perfecteth that which concerneth me, that, well, that's it. And then this he can take over, and it can be a man in the back of the plane. He wasn't there when they landed. He probably got off at one of the way stations. So it is then that you could say that his consciousness of the presence brought about his safe journey across sea, without which he'd have gone down, not knowing where he was or how. He'd have been out of gasoline. But his awareness of the presence was that which brought about the reaction of seeing him safely there. In all cases, then, it is your consciousness that is determining your experience. And if your consciousness knows this truth, that I am not a mortal who was conceived in sin and brought forth in iniquity, I is God. And I, Joel, is the Son of God, one with God, heir of God, joint heir to all that the Father hath. And as long as I can embody that in my consciousness and not look out here, my consciousness of the infinite nature of God and the omnipresence of God, this produces the effect of harmony or abundance in my affairs. If I look out and recognize God as your being, and even if I see error, I can excuse it on the ground of ignorance, forgive it, and certainly not judge it or condemn it, you are bound to act with love and friendship toward me, because I have ensured it. I haven't left it up to your human nature. I haven't left it up to your environment. And I haven't left myself at the mercy of other people's biases and bigotries and hatreds. I've taken that sting out of them because I have recognized their Christhood. And in their Christhood there are no such qualities. So then, to live free of the world's hatred and bias and bigotry, it is only necessary to live in the realization of their Christhood. Now then, we will still meet people who will act like Mr. Khrushchev, for instance, recently. We will still meet people who are so adamant in their mortality that this doesn't change them. This doesn't move their consciousness. This doesn't influence them. This that I am knowing. There remains just one further step. Regardless of what evil they aim at our direction, don't personalize it. Realize, thou hast not done this unto me, but unto God. And let God take care of it in God's own way. But when you say, thou hast not done it unto me, don't pin it onto them. Don't personalize it there either. That thou that you're talking about is carnal mind. Thou carnal mind that's acting this way, you are not acting this way to me, but unto God. And then drop it. Impersonalize it at the other end and impersonalize it at this end, and there are no more persons involved. And then you find again that one of two things has to happen. The moment you've turned the situation over to God, they either get healed or removed. No question. If they remain adamant, like our friends Sapphira, Nicodemus, they drop dead, that's all. There's no other fate left to them. But if they're not quite that unyielding, they can be healed. And heaven knows I have witnessed in my life, and more especially in this past 14 years, where in the beginning nearly all of our work was with women, very seldom a man. And I had lots of antagonisms from the men of the household who thought their wives were being misled by some foolish teaching or by or spending their money, his money, unwisely. But through this impersonalizing, realizing that is not really man, that is only the carnal mind or antichrist that could feel that way, not man. The miracle that has happened is the amount of married couples that we have in our work, the amount of married couples all around the globe in every country that are coming to this work. The men, some of them who started out with indifference, others with outright antagonism, and then afterward became a part of the work. Only because there was no personalization. There was no putting the blame on them, because I can well understand their feeling if they are not aware of what this principle is, because we know all the things that go on in the world, sometimes under the guise of religion, sometimes under the guise of business, and so you can't help a man intelligent enough to earn a living wanting to protect it. But if we were to personalize this and find fault with them and blame them, we'd have it forever. But in impersonalizing it, in realizing this isn't man, there always has been Antichrist, there always will be, and not through hatred, through ignorance of what it is. And so, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And lo and behold, they awaken. Most of them do, and that's why in so much of our work you find so many married couples. So it is, remember, that you every moment are determining what comes back into your experience by the truth that is kept operative in your consciousness, or the untruth, or the lack of truth. If we walk around without truth and just think our worldly thoughts, then we're under the law and we have to take a portion of good and evil. And if we walk around ignorant of truth, we have to pay the penalty of ignorance. When we walk around with truth active in our consciousness, this is abiding in the Word and letting the Word abide in us. But be sure you know what the truth is. And the answer is, I am the truth. And if you ever get away from that and have an I and truth, you have duality again. You have two-ness, and you'll bring back duality into your experience. Whereas, once you realize, I'm not searching for truth, I'm not seeking for truth, I am the embodiment of truth. Then as you meditate, or as you give a treatment, you don't have to worry about what truth to know about your patient. All you have to do is turn within. Since you are the embodiment of truth, let this truth announce itself to you. It will come to you from the depths of this infinite storehouse of truth. Every one of us has an infinite storehouse of truth. It doesn't make any difference whether we've studied truth or not. It's all there because God consciousness is our individual consciousness, and all that is in God is in us. So all we have to do is turn within, draw it forth. And so it is that many students erroneously believe that they haven't the experience to do healing work. That is not true. That is not true. If they have the ability to sit down and just turn to the Father within and say, you have given me all of the truth that you have. Now let me consciously know it. And the truth will come to you that you need for your work, whatever it may be, because it isn't separate and apart from you. And over in classes you've heard me say, truth isn't in my books. Truth isn't in the Bible. The truth is within you. What you read in the books or in the Bible are just these little primers. What do you do with a pump? You prime it first, and then the water comes up. And so it is, we take these books and we take the Bible and we prime our consciousness. That's what we do. Then we sit back and say, but now it's your turn, Father. Reveal to me the truth that is already embodied within me, and then the truth can reveal itself. Not the truth about the truth, the truth which I am, the truth which I embody. And always remember the word I, because that word is your salvation. Your truth from now unto eternity is embodied within the I that I am, and I am that truth. I embody that truth. Your supply, your bread, your meat, your wine, your water, is embodied within the I that I am. And your housing, and your transportation, and your immortality, and your eternality. All of this is embodied in that infinite storehouse which I am. Therefore, you must open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape. And you see it easily with the subject of music, that if you are a composer, there must be an infinity of combinations of notes within you. And if you don't know this, you might have to go out and copy other people's music. But if you know it, you turn within yourself and let these melodies come forth that have never been heard before. And so it is, whatever the subject may be, it is within you. And the reason is the word I. I have meat the world knows not of. And that meat is in the form of everything necessary for my experience, not merely from the cradle to the grave, but on into infinity, because the promise is, I will be with thee unto the end of the world. So there'll be no lessening of that I. 70, 80, 90, it makes no difference unless you really want to make the transition. I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. I never changeth. I am infinite. I am life eternal. The whole secret of life is embodied in the I that I am, and I must open out a way for the imprisoned splendor to escape, rather than to make entry for a light supposed to be out here, or supply, or healing, or something else, when all of it is embodied within me. So do you not see that within your own consciousness is the determining factor of what transpires in your life after you have known this truth? Before you knew this truth, you were a victim of what others thought, what the universal belief may have been, whether we were going through a period of those good old days, or whether it was a peace period, or a war period, or a Cold War. Always you were the victim of what was going on, but now no more. Now, I and my Father are one. And the infinity of God is the infinity of my individual being, for I and the Father are one. And now I know that I must open out a way. I must find a way to give, to share, to do, to be, and never sit and wait for something to happen to me. Always let it be happening out from me. And the secret word is I. I embody, I embrace, I include within myself the allness of God, and it flows by my sharing it. The more I share, the more I have. And it's a strange thing. No, it isn't strange. I mean, it's natural, but it seems strange to us that when we are in the midst of classwork like this, that every night all of these things flow like this, but when we're not having classes, they don't even deign to come to me. They stay locked up inside. But if I'm answering my mail and there's a need to write to a student or a patient, they come out again. Or if I have to do an article, they'll come out again. The minute I don't, they stay bottled up. And if I don't sit down with a pen, they're inside. The minute I sit down with a pen, the ink begins to leak. And fortunately, it leaks words. Yes, all of these messages are inside the pen. All they need is someone to push them. Wonderful, wonderful. It's been a beautiful class. I'm so thankful, so thankful. Just lifted me up high. It's give me a couple of gray hairs, but I'll cover those up.